Hey y'all, how's it going? Welcome back to Seed to Plate channel. My name is Brooke, and today I've been wanting to make this video for a while, and for some reason I just haven't. But today I want to talk to you about weeds and how, in my opinion, you'll never have a weed-free garden, which might be a little controversial, but we're gonna find out. So the reason I say you'll probably never have a weed-free garden is because I've never had a weed-free garden, and if you're watching this channel, you are very likely, very much like me, and you probably have a job, and gardening is probably not that job, which, as much as we would all love for that to happen, might just not be a thing. I built these beds this year, and so naturally, because they are in-ground beds, they're gonna have more weeds than normal. And by the way, weed is not a actual plant. Well, depends on what you do in your free time, but there is no like actual classification of a weed. A weed is just a plant that you don't really want growing where it's currently growing. And a lot of times for at-home gardeners, that comes in the form of grass. And so with me, with this being a first-year bed, that is a lot of my weeds, is grass. And I have found so many gardeners get so frustrated with weeds. That tends to be why a lot of gardeners quit, in my experience, which, if that's not your bag, that's fine. But one thing I want to make sure I say is a lot of the gardens that you see that are all perfect, whether they're like your local botanical garden or even if you follow other, gardening YouTubers, y'all, most of them are very upfront about the fact that they have employees and they have people working for them, and like this is their job. Their job is to give you inspiration so that you garden, and that's wonderful. But what I don't want you to do is live under the guise that your garden is going to look like theirs and be all beautifully weed-free, because it's not. My garden surely is not weed-free, especially because it's a first-year garden. The other reason I know your garden's never going to be weed-free is because my parents' garden isn't weed-free. Let me tell you why that's important. My parents, they have extremely tall garden beds that we built for them because my dad is very tall and he has back problems. And I'm telling you, these beds are like probably 4 feet off the ground. They still have grass growing through them. Okay? So, let's talk about weeds. Let's talk about how weeds grow, how weeds spread, and then let's talk about ways that you can reduce your weeds, because remember what I said at the top, you're never gonna get rid of your weeds. You're never gonna have a weed-free garden. The faster you just accept that, the better. So last time I was weeding in this bed, there was a baby snake that came out. Okay, so let's talk about the different types of weeds. Also, can we just appreciate my tomato plant that's like trellising its dang self? All right, there's a few types of weeds. There are the types of weeds that spread through rhizomes. Let's look at those. So this tiny grass that you see right here is a great example of a weed that spreads through rhizomes. Those are usually the harder ones to pull, and they tend to be your grasses like Bermuda. So your weeds can either spread through rhizomes, which is like Bermuda grass and stuff like that, or it's gonna spread through seeds that move through the air. With seeds that spread through rhizomes, the only way you're gonna get rid of that weed is to pull it out over and over and over and over again. In my experience, also this is a hori-hori knife, great for weeding. In my experience, if you keep at these suckers and you get down and cut them off at the root, you can, over time, really reduce your weed pressure. Now, with that being said, I'm also a big believer in mulch. And mulch is going to suppress your weeds so that sunlight cannot actually get down to let them grow. And so I'm a big believer in mulch for weeds that spread via rhizome. And honestly, you just have to pick them as much as you can. If you can get out to your garden and weed for an hour every week, you are going to be in much, much better shape. Now, there are other kinds of weeds that spread through spreading their seeds through the air. A really good example of this that we all know and love are dandelions. I don't think I have any because I literally just mowed, which is why I look like this. But that's also a really good example. So what spurred me to make this video was a little bit of, you know, good old anger. I was seeing on social media that somebody was saying that weed pressure and having weeds is a soil fertility problem. All right, let's break that down really quick. Okay, so we already said that weeds are just plants that we don't want in that place, okay? Literally, I saw like this total BS, multiple posts about how weeds were fertility problems in the soil. And I wanted to address it because I think it's absolute garbage. So weeds, like we already said at the top, are just plants that you don't want to grow there. There's no species of weed, okay? So if there's no actual type of plant called a weed, then there's no way that your soil fertility could possibly affect the plant and the way that it grows. I'm telling you right now, the only time I have ever not had weeds in my garden was when my soil was dead. My old backyard garden really struggled. The soil was super compacted. The soil was just not good. And I really struggled with that soil, but I never had weeds. To me, in my experience, the only soil that does not grow weeds is dead soil. So if somebody says, I'll DM you a link for you to get my free ebook for a weed-free garden, they're just trying to grow their email list so they can sell it to someone else. Don't believe it. There's a gnat flying around my face. I'm gonna lose my mind. Now here's the other thing. Weeds, unless they're really excessive, are not gonna hurt your plants, y'all. They're just not. So if you have prepared your beds and you have mulched and you have weeds that you pick once every week, once every couple weeks, your plants are gonna be fine. Look at me. Do you see this? You see this? Y'all, I weed my garden once a week. I put down mulch. I don't do anything special. And I certainly don't make myself crazy about it, okay? Your garden is supposed to be a place of joy. It's not going to be perfect unless you are a full-time gardener, like professionally, or a content creator, okay? So the whole weed-free garden aesthetic, I'm real over it. Now, I just heard my first cicadas of the year. Now, with the weeds that have a seed head on them, if you cut that weed before it goes to seed, or you pull it, that is a really good and effective way to stop weeds, okay? Now, the other really good and effective way to stop weeds is to plant very bio-intensively. What in the heels does that mean? That means you plant stuff really close together. Oh, there's a hornet, I'm getting off the ground. Oh, no! All right, so let me show you what that means. Now, you see these beds over here? These beds have more weeds in them for a couple of reasons. One of the biggest reasons is that ground over there was very hard to till, and it's definitely got a Bermuda grass problem. This ground was not hard to till and does not have a Bermuda grass problem. However, I planted these beds very bio-intensively. The other ones, I did not do quite as good of a job. Is this gnat just like drinking my sweat? What is happening? Because when you pack stuff in nice and tight, you are shading the ground so that the weeds can't actually grow, okay? That is one of the most effective ways to lessen your weed pressure, is to make sure that you plant really intensely so that there's nothing for them to grow, because weeds are just like other plants. They need sun, they need water, they need soil. Well, guess what? You gotta give them water and you gotta give them soil because they're already in your garden. So the only thing that you can do is prevent them from having sun. Now, some people will lay down cardboard, some people will lay down mulch. We all know I'm a big mulch believer on this channel. Hardwood mulch, I lay it down every season. It breaks down, it's really good for the soil, and it will help suppress your weeds if you do a thick enough layer of it. So, I know this video wasn't very long. I'm not really sure I even had a good amount of information in it. However, so if you have weeds in your garden, what I don't want you to do is be discouraged, okay? Everybody has weeds in their garden. Even if you see somebody's big, beautiful garden tour and they have 0 weeds, they probably had weeds 2 hours before that garden tour and they pulled them, okay? So, don't be frustrated by any appearance of weeds. Know that it's okay and that you're probably never gonna have a weed-free garden, and just do your best. So I know this one was short and sweet, but thanks so much for watching. Happy gardening. We'll see you next time.